After 21 years investigating UFOs for the British government, Nick Pope thought he'd seen everything. Then came the London art shop incident, a case so bizarre that it sounds like science fiction, yet the evidence baffled investigators. Multiple witnesses walked into a central London store, all behaving in ways that defied human logic. They made a big show of buying a single pencil, handed over a high-denomination banknote, then looked completely confused when offered change, as if they didn't understand the concept. The shop owner was so struck by their behavior that she phoned authorities afterward, saying there were aliens in her shop. With 2025 bringing unprecedented government transparency about UAPs, Pope is finally ready to discuss the encounters that made him question whether we're truly alone, and whether some visitors might be hiding in plain sight. But this openness represents a dramatic shift from how these investigations began. The evolution of government UFO disclosure. The decades of secrecy that defined Pope's early career have given way to an era where government officials acknowledge UAP encounters in congressional hearings. When Pope first started investigating UFOs for the Ministry of Defense in 1991, discussing these cases openly meant career suicide. The official position was simple: UFOs didn't exist, witnesses were mistaken, and anyone suggesting otherwise lacked credibility. Pope worked in near isolation, filing reports that disappeared into classified vaults, while the public received sanitized press releases, dismissing every incident as weather balloons or military exercises. 3 key milestones marked this transformation from denial to acknowledgement. Project Blue Book's closure in 1969 officially ended government UFO investigation, declaring no evidence of extraterrestrial visitation. The UK's Condign report in 2000 acknowledged unusual aerial phenomena, but concluded they posed no defense threat. Then came the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office under National Defense Authorization Act mandates, which received 757 UAP reports in fiscal year 2024, compared to just 291 the previous year, with officials testifying about unexplained encounters in public congressional hearings. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office represents the most dramatic shift in government approach. AARO operates with congressional oversight and public reporting requirements that would have been unthinkable during Pope's tenure. Where Pope once worked alone with minimal resources, AARO coordinates between multiple agencies with substantial funding and advanced detection systems. The office publishes detailed case studies that include witness testimonies, sensor data, and analysis methodologies. Legislative changes have mandated transparency at levels Pope never imagined possible. The National Defense Authorization Act now requires annual UAP reports to Congress. Intelligence agencies must brief lawmakers on historical cases previously buried in classified archives. Whistleblower protections exist for personnel reporting UAP encounters, removing the fear of retaliation that kept witnesses silent during Pope's era. Pope's methodical approach to investigation established protocols now used across government UAP programs. His emphasis on witness credibility, multiple source verification, and scientific analysis became the foundation for modern UAP research. The techniques he developed for evaluating radar data, correlating witness accounts, and assessing pilot testimony appear throughout current AARO methodologies. His work proved that serious scientific investigation could be applied to phenomena previously dismissed as folklore. This unprecedented openness creates a fascinating paradox. Government officials now acknowledge that some UAP cases represent technology beyond current human capabilities. They admit that certain encounters involve craft demonstrating physics-defying performance characteristics. Yet the most compelling cases from Pope's archives remain classified at levels higher than nuclear weapons programs. The contradiction becomes more apparent when examining specific disclosure patterns. Military personnel can now discuss recent UAP encounters without career consequences. Current pilots receive official channels for reporting anomalous aircraft. Meanwhile, witnesses from Pope's era still face classification restrictions on cases from the 1990s. Some incidents that occurred 30 years ago remain more heavily classified than contemporary encounters involving identical phenomena. Pope witnessed this transformation from the unique position of someone who lived through both eras. He experienced the isolation and stigma of investigating UAPs when such work was career poison. Now he watches congressional representatives demand answers to questions he was forbidden from asking publicly. The same military installations that denied UAP incidents during his tenure now acknowledge ongoing encounters with unidentified craft. Current disclosure efforts focus primarily on recent military encounters captured by advanced sensor systems. The emphasis remains on nuts and bolts craft displaying unusual flight characteristics. Yet Pope's archives contain cases involving consciousness effects, telepathic communication, and reality-bending encounters that defy conventional analysis. These aspects of the phenomenon remain largely absent from official discussion. The selective nature of disclosure becomes clearer when examining which cases receive public attention. Recent military encounters with metallic objects performing extraordinary maneuvers get congressional hearings and media coverage. Pope's documented cases involving entity encounters, reality distortions, and consciousness-related phenomena remain buried in classified files. The government appears willing to acknowledge advanced technology, but reluctant to discuss the more ontologically challenging aspects of UAP encounters. This new environment affects how historical cases can be investigated and understood. Modern detection systems can potentially validate radar data from Pope's era that was previously dismissed as inconclusive. Advanced analysis techniques might reveal patterns in historical sightings that weren't apparent with 1990s technology. Contemporary medical research could explain physiological effects experienced by witnesses in Pope's cases. Yet significant barriers remain. Classification systems established during Pope's era continue protecting the most sensitive cases. Interagency coordination problems that frustrated Pope's investigations persist despite official commitments to transparency. Cultural resistance within military and intelligence communities still influences which information gets released and which remains hidden. Pope's unique perspective reveals both the progress made and the limitations of current disclosure efforts. He understands which aspects of the phenomenon remain hidden and why certain cases stay classified despite growing transparency pressures. His experience bridges the gap between decades of secrecy and emerging openness, providing context for understanding what current disclosures actually mean. The evolution from Pope's isolated investigations to today's multi-agency programs demonstrates that official attitudes toward UAPs can change dramatically. However, the most profound cases in Pope's files suggest that full disclosure would require acknowledgments about reality that go far beyond advanced aircraft or foreign technology. This framework shapes how we should examine Pope's classic cases, where each incident must be viewed through the lens of what governments were willing to hide for decades and what they're finally ready to acknowledge. Some cases from Pope's tenure remain so extraordinary that they challenge our understanding of what's possible, even in today's climate of increased transparency. The Cosford Incident Revisited. The Cosford Incident of March 31, 1993 stands as one of the most documented and disturbing cases in Pope's files. This wasn't just a single sighting, but a coordinated wave of encounters involving massive triangular craft that appeared across multiple counties. These weren't distant lights or ambiguous shapes. Witnesses described enormous structured objects, some estimated at over 200 feet across, moving with deliberate purpose through British airspace. Psychological impact on witnesses was immediate and profound. One pilot spotted this huge triangular craft hovering near his home and made a decision that defied all rational thinking. He grabbed his car keys, started the engine, and began pursuing this unknown object down country roads at 35 to 40 mph, as documented by Pope. His family sat in the back seat screaming at him to stop, but something about the encounter had triggered a response that overrode normal caution. This wasn't curiosity or scientific interest. The craft had somehow compelled him to follow, creating a behavioral change that witnesses struggle to explain even decades later. The pursuit lasted several miles before the object simply accelerated away at impossible speeds. The witness described feeling frustrated and confused after losing sight of the craft, as if he'd been snapped out of some kind of trance. His family remained shaken by his behavior, describing it as completely out of character. This wasn't someone known for reckless decisions or impulsive actions, yet the presence of the triangular craft had triggered responses that seemed to bypass his normal decision-making processes. A farmer in the same area reported seeing the craft flying extremely low over his property. The altitude was so unusual that he assumed it must have landed somewhere nearby. When he investigated the following morning, he discovered something that still gives investigators pause. Every cow in his field was standing in a perfect circle, all facing inward toward the center, as farmers reported to authorities. The animals had arranged themselves in a formation that agricultural experts had never documented before or since. Pope noted that the scene looked like something straight out of the X-Files. Cattle don't naturally form geometric patterns, and attempts to recreate this behavior through various stimuli have failed completely. The farmer contacted veterinarians and livestock specialists, hoping for some explanation. none could provide one. The cows showed no signs of distress, injury, or unusual behavior after the incident. They simply returned to normal grazing patterns as if nothing had happened. Yet the precision of their circular formation suggested some external influence had orchestrated their position. The timing correlation with the triangular craft sighting was too specific to dismiss as coincidence. Modern radar analysis capabilities have transformed how we can examine the original 1993 data. Advanced algorithms that didn't exist during Pope's investigation can now identify patterns in radar returns that were previously dismissed as equipment malfunctions or atmospheric interference. The original radar operators noted uncorrelated targets appearing on their screens during the timeframe of witness sightings, but 1990s technology couldn't process these signals effectively. Contemporary analysis reveals that these radar signatures match specific characteristics now associated with UAP encounters. The targets displayed acceleration patterns that exceed known aircraft capabilities. They appeared and disappeared from radar coverage in ways that suggest advanced stealth technology or exotic propulsion systems. Most significantly, the radar data correlates precisely with witness location reports and timing estimates, providing technical validation for accounts that were previously considered purely anecdotal. Current understanding of UAP flight characteristics aligns remarkably with witness descriptions from the Cosford encounters. The triangular craft reportedly moved at approximately 35 to 40 mph during low-altitude phases, producing a low-frequency humming sound that was deeply unpleasant and could be felt as well as heard. These details match contemporary UAP reports with striking consistency. Modern witnesses describe identical acoustic signatures and similar subsonic movement patterns, followed by instantaneous acceleration. The craft's ability to suddenly accelerate away to the horizon in an instant represents one of the 5 observables that current UAP researchers use to classify unexplained encounters. This specific performance characteristic appears in classified military reports from 2024 and 2025, suggesting that the same technology witnessed in 1993 continues operating in modern airspace. The consistency across 3 decades indicates either remarkably stable propulsion technology or the same intelligence continuing to operate identical craft. Global UAP databases now contain hundreds of triangular craft reports from 2024 and 2025 that mirror the Cosford description. These contemporary sightings occur worldwide but concentrate around military installations and nuclear facilities, similar to the pattern established in the 1990s. The craft dimensions, flight characteristics, and acoustic signatures remain virtually identical across different continents and decades. This consistency suggests systematic operations rather than random appearances. Intelligence analysts have identified coordination between triangular craft sightings that implies organized activity. Multiple craft often appear simultaneously in different regions, operating at distances that would require instantaneous communication or predetermined coordination. The timing patterns suggest these aren't isolated phenomena, but components of larger operations that span global distances and extended timeframes. Current theories about non-human intelligence testing human responses find support in the Cosford behavioral patterns. The compulsive chase behavior exhibited by the pilot mirrors responses documented in contemporary UAP encounters. Witnesses frequently report feeling compelled to approach or follow unknown craft despite rational awareness of potential dangers. This suggests psychological effects that operate independently of conscious decision-making. The cattle arrangement adds another dimension to theories about environmental manipulation. If non-human intelligence was indeed testing human and animal responses, the perfectly circular cattle formation would represent a clear message. The precision and impossibility of natural occurrence ensure the anomaly would be noticed and remembered. The temporary nature of the effect suggests controlled experimentation rather than permanent environmental change. The Cosford incident established templates for understanding UAP behavior that remain valid 3 decades later. The combination of advanced propulsion capabilities, psychological effects on witnesses, environmental anomalies, and systematic operation patterns appears consistently across historical and contemporary cases. Yet even this extraordinary case pales in comparison to encounters that left physical evidence and permanent effects on military personnel. Rendlesham Forest through modern eyes. December 1980 changed everything we thought we knew about UFO encounters. Rendlesham Forest became Britain's most documented case, involving multiple U.S. Air Force personnel stationed at RAF Bentwaters who witnessed structured craft operating near one of NATO's most sensitive nuclear weapons storage facilities. The witnesses weren't random civilians or single observers making extraordinary claims. These were trained military personnel with security clearances who risked their careers by reporting what they saw. The health effects experienced by Rendlesham witnesses puzzled military doctors for decades. Personnel reported severe headaches, nausea, and skin irritation that appeared immediately after their encounters with the craft. Some developed long-term neurological symptoms that defied conventional medical explanation. Military medical records from the period show doctors prescribing treatments for radiation exposure despite having no official explanation for how airmen could have been exposed to such levels on a routine patrol. Current medical research validates what those 1980s doctors couldn't understand. Dr. Gary Nolan's Stanford studies on UAP experiencers reveal specific brain changes that match the neurological symptoms reported by Rendlesham witnesses. The caudate putamen region shows consistent alterations in individuals who have had close encounters with unknown craft. These changes correlate with the cognitive effects and persistent headaches that Rendlesham personnel experienced but couldn't explain to military physicians. Modern understanding of exotic radiation exposure aligns perfectly with the physical evidence collected at Rendlesham. Geiger counter readings taken at the landing site showed radiation levels of 0.07 milliroentgens per hour in the depressions where the craft allegedly touched down, compared to background measurements of 0.03 to 0.04 milliroentgens per hour in surrounding areas. The pattern of contamination matched no known source, creating hotspots in specific locations while leaving adjacent areas completely unaffected. Contemporary analysis techniques can now identify radiation signatures that indicate exposure to elements not found in terrestrial nuclear processes. Jim Peniston's binary code download represents one of the most extraordinary aspects of the entire case. During his close approach to the craft, Peniston reported receiving a stream of binary information directly into his consciousness. The experience felt like data being transferred at incredible speeds, filling his mind with sequences of ones and zeros that he couldn't understand. Under some kind of compulsion, he spent weeks after the incident writing out these binary strings, producing 16 pages filled with what appeared to be random digital code. He kept this information secret for decades before finally revealing it to researcher Linda Moulton Howe. When decoded using standard binary conversion methods, the sequences yielded precise latitude and longitude coordinates pointing to locations of historical significance around the world. These coordinates pinpoint ancient sites, religious locations, and areas associated with previous UFO encounters. The precision matches current GPS standards, indicating knowledge of Earth's geographical features that exceeds 1980s surveying capabilities. Most remarkably, some coordinates point to locations that didn't have historical significance until years after the Rendlesham incident, with archaeological discoveries made in the 1990s and 2000s confirming the importance of sites referenced in his 1980 download. Pentagon studies on UAP biological effects have created new frameworks for understanding what happened to Rendlesham witnesses. The Department of Defense now acknowledges that close encounters with unidentified craft can produce measurable physiological changes in human subjects. These effects include altered brain chemistry, immune system modifications, and genetic markers that persist years after the initial encounter. The symptoms match exactly what Rendlesham personnel reported to military doctors 4 decades ago. Recent witness testimonies have emerged as military personnel reach retirement age and feel freed from classification restrictions. These new accounts provide additional details that were suppressed during the original investigation. Retiring officers describe seeing additional craft that weren't included in official reports. Some reveal communications with base command that contradict the public narrative about military knowledge of the events. The nuclear facility connection has become impossible to ignore as similar incidents occur worldwide. RAF Bentwaters stored nuclear weapons in underground bunkers located within miles of where the craft appeared. The proximity wasn't coincidental according to current analysis of global UAP activity. Incidents at nuclear installations have increased dramatically in 2024 and 2025, with unknown craft demonstrating particular interest in weapons storage areas and missile silos. Contemporary cases at Malmstrom Air Force Base, F.E. Warren Air Force Base, and several international nuclear facilities show identical patterns to the Rendlesham encounter. Unknown craft appear near nuclear storage areas, demonstrate advanced surveillance capabilities, and affect both personnel and equipment in ways that suggest sophisticated intelligence gathering operations. The consistency across different countries and decades indicates systematic monitoring of human nuclear capabilities. Recently declassified documents have corroborated witness accounts that were previously dismissed as fabrication or misidentification. Communications logs between RAF Bentwaters and higher command show real-time reporting of unknown craft in the area. Radar data confirms the presence of objects that exhibited flight characteristics beyond conventional aircraft capabilities. The declassified materials reveal that military leadership knew the Rendlesham incident involved genuinely anomalous phenomena, with internal memos discussing national security implications and orders issued to limit discussion of the events. AARO investigations have validated the analytical techniques Pope developed during his original examination of the Rendlesham case. His methodologies for correlating witness testimonies, analyzing physical evidence, and evaluating radar data have become standard procedures for current UAP investigations. His emphasis on treating military witnesses as credible sources rather than delusional individuals represents a fundamental shift that continues influencing government UAP research. Modern analysis reveals Rendlesham as more than an isolated incident, but part of systematic surveillance operations targeting human nuclear capabilities. The craft behavior, witness effects, and location selection follow patterns that continue appearing in current UAP encounters. This consistency validates Pope's original conclusion that we're dealing with intelligence that possesses technology far beyond current human capabilities and maintains active interest in our most sensitive military installations. Yet not all encounters involve military installations or advanced craft displaying impossible flight characteristics. Some of the most unsettling cases in Pope's files involve something far more disturbing, entities that appear completely human until you examine their behavior closely enough to realize something fundamental is wrong. The Art Shop Aliens and Hidden Visitors. The London Art Shop incident stands as one of the most chilling examples of potential non-human entities attempting to navigate human society. This case suggests visitors who understand our world intellectually but lack the intuitive knowledge that comes from actually living within it. The encounter unfolded on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when approximately 8 individuals entered a central London art supply store. Their appearance raised no immediate concerns: proper clothing, appropriate grooming, nothing obviously unusual about their physical characteristics. The shop owner initially assumed they were tourists or art students browsing her inventory with genuine interest. Their behavior revealed subtle wrongness that became impossible to ignore. The group moved with unnatural coordination, never separating or wandering independently like normal customers. They examined paintbrushes and sketch pads with scientific fascination, holding items at odd angles as if encountering these objects for the first time. Every movement appeared deliberate and synchronized, suggesting shared awareness rather than individual decision-making. The monetary transaction exposed their fundamental disconnect from human society. After nearly an hour of coordinated browsing, they approached the counter with a single pencil, the cheapest item available. The purchase became an elaborate production, with all 8 members gathering around to observe this simple transaction with intense focus. One produced a high-denomination banknote, far exceeding the pencil's minimal cost. When the shop owner calculated change and began counting out bills and coins, the entire group displayed genuine bewilderment. They stared at the returned money as if witnessing an incomprehensible ritual. Their apparent leader accepted the change but held it awkwardly, clearly uncertain about these additional pieces of paper and metal. The group exchanged glances that conveyed shared confusion about this unexpected aspect of human commerce. The shop owner attempted to explain the concept of change, assuming they were foreign visitors unfamiliar with British currency. Her explanation seemed to startle them further. They listened with expressions of concentrated effort, processing information about what appeared to be an alien concept. After receiving the change, they stood motionless for several moments before abruptly departing without normal social acknowledgments or pleasantries. The encounter left such a profound impression that the shop owner contacted authorities the same day, telling them there had been aliens in her shop. She described feeling certain that she had witnessed beings attempting to mimic human behavior while lacking fundamental understanding of basic social and economic interactions. The precision of their coordination combined with collective confusion about monetary exchange suggested intelligence operating according to different principles than human thinking. Similar reports have increased dramatically throughout 2025, with surveillance technology capturing behaviors that match the art shop pattern. Security cameras in retail locations document groups displaying identical coordination problems and confusion about routine transactions. Shopping centers report incidents where individuals examine common objects with scientific fascination, as if encountering them for the first time. Restaurant staff describe customers who order food but seem uncertain about eating procedures or social dining customs. Contemporary witnesses report encounters with groups that move with subtle synchronization, suggesting shared consciousness or external coordination. These individuals often wear clothing that appears brand new, as if recently acquired specifically for blending into human environments. Their speech patterns sound rehearsed, lacking the natural variations and personal expressions that characterize normal human conversation. The coordination extends beyond immediate group interactions. Multiple reports describe separate incidents occurring simultaneously in different cities, involving groups displaying identical behavioral patterns. This suggests either extensive preparation or communication systems that coordinate activities across vast distances. The consistency implies organized operations rather than random appearances. Modern surveillance technology reveals behavioral patterns that human observation might miss. Facial recognition systems identify individuals who appear at multiple locations simultaneously or display expressions that don't match their apparent emotional states. Gait analysis software detects walking patterns that suggest unfamiliarity with human locomotion. These technological observations validate witness reports about subtle wrongness in apparently normal individuals. The frequency of such encounters appears to be increasing based on reports to civilian UFO organizations and law enforcement agencies. Restaurant workers, retail employees, and service industry personnel report more frequent interactions with customers who seem to be learning human behavior through direct observation. These incidents concentrate in urban areas where individuals can blend more easily into diverse populations. Transportation hubs report increased incidents involving groups that display confusion about travel procedures, documentation requirements, and social customs associated with mass transit. Airport security personnel describe individuals who seem unfamiliar with basic human infrastructure despite carrying proper identification and travel documents. These encounters suggest beings who understand human systems intellectually but lack intuitive knowledge of how these systems operate in practice. The psychological effects on witnesses mirror those reported in traditional UFO encounters. Individuals who recognize the anomalous nature of these interactions often experience lasting unease and persistent questions about the encounter. The uncanny valley effect intensifies when witnesses realize they've interacted with beings that appeared human but operated according to non-human principles. Law enforcement agencies receive reports of groups that gather in public spaces but engage in activities that serve no apparent human purpose. These gatherings involve coordinated observations of human behavior, systematic documentation of social interactions, and practice sessions where participants rehearse normal human activities. The activities suggest intelligence gathering operations designed to improve integration capabilities. The art shop incident established recognition patterns that help identify similar encounters in contemporary reports. The combination of physical normalcy, behavioral coordination, cultural confusion, and collective problem-solving approaches creates signatures that distinguish these encounters from normal human interactions. These patterns provide evidence that non-human intelligence has maintained ongoing operations within human society far longer than most people realize. While these infiltration cases represent one category of contemporary UAP activity, they pale in comparison to the technological demonstrations now being captured by military sensor systems that didn't exist during Pope's era. 2025's most compelling new evidence. Advanced sensor networks have documented encounters that confirm patterns Pope identified decades earlier using far more primitive technology. The quality and quantity of evidence collected in 2025 represents the most significant advancement in UAP research since Pope's original investigations, providing objective validation for phenomena that were previously dismissed as anecdotal reports. The Cosford triangular craft sightings from 1993 have found their modern equivalent in multiple 2025 encounters involving identical objects displaying the same flight characteristics. Military radar systems now capture detailed tracking data showing these triangular craft maintaining the same low-altitude flight patterns at 35 to 40 mph that Pope's witnesses described 30 years ago. The consistency extends to acoustic signatures, with modern recording equipment documenting the identical low-frequency, humming that witnesses reported feeling in their chests during the original Cosford wave. Contemporary military personnel describe behavioral responses that mirror exactly what Pope documented in his 1990s cases. Pilots report feeling compelled to maintain visual contact with unknown craft despite mission parameters requiring different actions. The psychological effects remain consistent across generations, with current witnesses using nearly identical language to describe their encounters as Pope's original subjects. This consistency suggests stable operational procedures by intelligence that has maintained identical interaction protocols for over 3 decades. The Calvine photograph, long considered one of the most compelling pieces of UAP evidence from Pope's era, has gained new significance through advanced image analysis techniques. Digital enhancement methods that didn't exist in the 1990s reveal details about the craft's construction and surface characteristics that were invisible to original investigators. The photograph shows a diamond-shaped object demonstrating the same hovering capabilities that appear in contemporary military footage, creating direct visual connections between historical and current encounters. Modern isotopic analysis has revolutionized physical evidence evaluation in ways that vindicate Pope's original conclusions about recovered materials. Metallic fragments collected from recent landing sites contain elemental ratios that don't occur naturally on Earth, confirming Pope's suspicions about artifacts that 1990s technology could only classify as unusual. Mass spectrometry techniques now provide definitive proof of non-terrestrial origins for materials that were dismissed as inconclusive during Pope's investigations. The Shooter Trails photograph from Pope's archives has undergone extensive digital analysis using contemporary forensic techniques. Computer algorithms designed to detect image manipulation have confirmed the photograph's authenticity while revealing previously unnoticed details about the craft's propulsion system. The analysis shows energy emissions around the object's perimeter that match theoretical models for exotic propulsion technologies, providing scientific validation for visual evidence that was previously considered interesting but unverifiable. Geographic correlation analysis demonstrates that current UAP hotspots align precisely with locations Pope identified as high-activity zones during his Ministry of Defense tenure. The same military installations continue experiencing elevated encounter rates, with identical craft types appearing at bases where Pope documented similar incidents decades earlier. This geographic consistency eliminates theories about random appearances of experimental aircraft and supports conclusions about systematic surveillance operations. International data sharing has created evidence packages that exceed anything available during Pope's era. Allied military forces now coordinate UAP reporting through secure channels, allowing real-time correlation of encounters across multiple countries. Recent incidents have occurred simultaneously at bases in different nations, involving craft displaying identical characteristics and behaviors within narrow timeframes. This coordination provides evidence for global operations that Pope theorized but couldn't prove using 1990s communication systems. Advanced electromagnetic analysis has documented energy signatures that validate witness reports from Pope's historical cases. Modern instrumentation records specific frequency patterns that affect communications equipment, radar systems, and electronic navigation devices in ways that match exactly the interference effects Pope's witnesses described. The electromagnetic signatures remain consistent across different encounters and geographic locations, indicating stable technology rather than evolving experimental systems. Biological analysis of samples collected from recent landing sites has revealed genetic material that doesn't match any known terrestrial organisms. DNA sequencing techniques that didn't exist during Pope's investigations now provide definitive evidence of non-human intelligence. These samples contain amino acid sequences that suggest alternative evolutionary pathways, confirming Pope's theories about encounters involving beings that evolved under different environmental conditions than Earth-based life forms. Satellite surveillance networks have eliminated the geographic limitations that constrain Pope's ground-based investigations. Contemporary encounters are tracked across intercontinental distances, providing comprehensive flight path documentation that was impossible to obtain during the 1990s. Multiple satellite systems now confirm transoceanic journeys at speeds that exceed known aircraft capabilities, creating irrefutable evidence for the global scope of UAP operations. The accumulation of 2025 evidence demonstrates that Pope's investigative methodologies were remarkably accurate despite technological limitations. His emphasis on witness credibility, systematic documentation, and correlation analysis established procedures that remain standard practice in current UAP research. Modern sensor systems validate conclusions that Pope reached through careful analysis of limited data, proving that these phenomena represent consistent intelligence operations rather than misidentified natural or human-made objects. Current documentation capabilities have transformed UAP investigation from a field dependent on witness testimony to one supported by comprehensive technical evidence. The same phenomena that Pope documented using interviews and basic instruments now generate detailed sensor data, electromagnetic recordings, and physical samples that provide objective validation for encounters that were previously dismissed as subjective experiences. Yet the most significant pattern emerging from 2025 evidence involves the locations where these encounters occur most frequently, revealing a connection that has remained constant since Pope's earliest investigations. The nuclear connection intensifies. Nuclear installations worldwide have become the primary targets for the most sophisticated UAP operations documented in modern history. The pattern represents systematic surveillance that demonstrates intimate knowledge of humanity's most classified defense systems. These aren't distant observations or brief flyovers. Unknown craft are conducting detailed reconnaissance operations at every major nuclear facility across multiple countries, displaying capabilities that challenge fundamental assumptions about global security. F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming experienced 4 separate UAP incursions between January and March 2025. Each incident involved disc-shaped craft that hovered directly over Minuteman III missile silos, remaining stationary for periods ranging from 20 minutes to over 2 hours. Security personnel reported complete electronic system failures during these encounters, with backup power systems going offline and communication networks becoming completely inoperative. The craft departed only after completing what appeared to be comprehensive scanning operations of the underground missile facilities. The psychological effects on nuclear facility personnel mirror exactly what Pope documented at military installations during the 1990s. Security officers at Malmstrom Air Force Base described feeling observed and evaluated during recent UAP encounters. Multiple witnesses reported receiving telepathic communication attempts that included mental images of nuclear detonations and their global consequences. These consciousness effects weren't random hallucinations, but coordinated messages suggesting the craft occupants understood both the weapon's destructive potential and humanity's struggles with nuclear proliferation. Radar operators at strategic command facilities have recorded objects demonstrating complete familiarity with nuclear weapon deployment procedures. During the April incident at Minot Air Force Base, unknown craft shadowed B-52 strategic bombers during training exercises, maintaining precise formation positions that indicated detailed knowledge of nuclear mission protocols. The objects anticipated flight path changes before they were communicated to bomber crews, suggesting either advanced surveillance capabilities or direct access to classified mission planning data. International coordination between nuclear powers has revealed the global scope of this surveillance campaign. British nuclear submarines report underwater UAP encounters that correlate precisely with surface sightings at their home ports. French nuclear facilities at La Hague experience identical craft appearances to those documented at American installations. Russian nuclear sites report similar encounters, though their government maintains official silence about the incidents. The coordination suggests a single intelligence systematically mapping human nuclear capabilities worldwide. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission received 18 reports of UAP incidents near critical infrastructure during 2024, though officials attributed these encounters to conventional drones. This explanation becomes problematic when examining the specific capabilities demonstrated by these objects. Conventional drones cannot maintain station keeping in 60 mph winds, operate continuously for 8-hour periods without refueling, or generate electromagnetic fields that disable hardened military electronics. The performance characteristics match no existing drone technology, civilian or military. Classified Pentagon briefings reveal growing concern about the national security implications of nuclear facility UAP encounters. Military leadership now acknowledges that these incidents represent potential intelligence gathering operations by unknown forces with advanced technology. Internal documents describe the encounters as systematic reconnaissance of strategic nuclear assets and recommend enhanced security protocols specifically designed to counter non-conventional surveillance threats. The language used in these briefings avoids speculation about craft origins while acknowledging their clear intelligence-gathering objectives. The historical connection between UAPs and nuclear weapons extends back to the earliest days of atomic weapons development. Pope's files contain documentation of similar encounters at British nuclear facilities throughout the 1980s and 1990s. The consistency across 4 decades indicates either the same intelligence maintaining ongoing operations or different intelligences following identical operational procedures. The persistence suggests strategic interest that transcends temporary political or military developments. Malmstrom Air Force Base has become a focal point for understanding the nuclear UAP connection. The 1967 incident where UAPs allegedly shut down nuclear missiles established patterns that continue appearing in contemporary encounters. Recent incidents at Malmstrom involve craft demonstrating identical capabilities to those reported 50 years ago. The objects appear suddenly on radar, hover over missile facilities, affect electronic systems, and depart without responding to military intercept attempts. The consistency indicates systematic operations rather than random appearances. Current military personnel describe psychological effects during nuclear facility encounters that match those documented in Pope's historical cases. Missile launch officers report receiving mental images of global nuclear exchange scenarios during UAP encounters. These visions aren't generalized fears about nuclear war, but specific sequences showing missile trajectories, detonation patterns, and casualty estimates that exceed the knowledge level of personnel experiencing them. The precision suggests external intelligence providing information about nuclear weapons, effects that individual operators wouldn't possess. The frequency of nuclear facility encounters has accelerated dramatically during periods of international tension. UAP activity at strategic weapons sites increased 300% during the 2024 Ukraine crisis and remained elevated through subsequent diplomatic tensions with China. This correlation suggests intelligence that monitors human nuclear readiness levels and responds to changes in global threat conditions. The timing indicates awareness of political developments that would only be available to entities with access to classified intelligence or capabilities for monitoring human decision-making processes. The technological capabilities demonstrated at nuclear facilities exceed anything in current human achievement by vast margins. Objects that can disable hardened electronics, operate in extreme weather conditions, and demonstrate detailed knowledge of classified facilities possess technology that would revolutionize human civilization if it could be understood and replicated. The implications extend beyond military applications to fundamental questions about energy production, transportation, and communication systems. The nuclear UAP connection represents the most critical aspect of the entire phenomenon because it involves direct interaction with humanity's most dangerous weapons. Whether these encounters represent surveillance, intervention, or preparation for future activities, they demonstrate that non-human intelligence possesses detailed knowledge of our nuclear capabilities and maintains active interest in how we manage these weapons. Yet the full implications of these encounters extend beyond strategic concerns to something far more personal and disturbing: the physical toll these interactions have taken on the human witnesses who experienced them firsthand. The health effects cover-up exposed. Military medical records from the 1980s and 1990s contain documentation that government physicians knew they were witnessing something extraordinary but lacked the scientific framework to understand it. Personnel exposed to UAP encounters developed symptoms that defied conventional medical explanation: persistent headaches, neurological changes, and radiation-like effects that appeared immediately after close contact with unknown craft. These conditions were meticulously documented, filed in medical databases, and then classified at security levels that prevented researchers from studying the emerging patterns. Dr. Gary Nolan's Stanford research team has validated what those military physicians observed decades ago, but couldn't comprehend using available medical knowledge. Brain imaging studies of UAP experiencers reveal consistent alterations in the caudate putamen region, the neural area responsible for processing complex information and coordinating motor functions. These changes appear exclusively in individuals reporting close encounters with unidentified craft, creating measurable neurological signatures that distinguish experiencers from control populations. The brain modifications aren't random damage but specific adaptations, suggesting exposure to exotic energy fields that don't exist in normal terrestrial environments. The caudate putamen alterations correspond precisely with symptoms that witnesses in Pope's historical cases reported to military doctors. Personnel described enhanced intuitive abilities, altered perception of time, and increased sensitivity to electromagnetic fields that medical staff dismissed as psychological stress reactions. Modern neuroscience explains these effects as consequences of neuroplasticity changes triggered by exposure to electromagnetic radiation beyond normal terrestrial sources. The brain modifications represent adaptive responses to energy environments that human neurology had never previously encountered. Declassified government medical studies now acknowledge radiation exposure patterns that puzzled military physicians during Pope's investigations. Health records from Rendlesham Forest personnel show radiation levels measuring 3 times higher than background readings, with contamination patterns that didn't match any known nuclear sources. The exposure signatures created medical mysteries that doctors couldn't solve using conventional radiation treatment protocols. Contemporary analysis reveals these radiation patterns match theoretical models for exotic propulsion systems that manipulate spacetime through controlled electromagnetic field generation. The Rendlesham medical documentation reveals physiological changes extending far beyond simple radiation exposure effects. Personnel developed immune system modifications that enhanced resistance to certain diseases while creating new sensitivities to electromagnetic radiation sources. Blood chemistry alterations persisted for years after initial encounters, indicating permanent genetic changes triggered by exposure to non-terrestrial energy sources. These modifications weren't random mutations, but systematic alterations suggesting intelligent design rather than accidental contamination. Modern medicine can finally treat conditions that baffled doctors during Pope's era of investigation. Neurological symptoms previously dismissed as psychological reactions to traumatic stress are now recognized as measurable brain changes requiring specific therapeutic interventions. Electromagnetic sensitivity that physicians considered psychosomatic can be managed using techniques developed for treating electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome. Radiation exposure effects that exceeded conventional treatment protocols now respond to chelation therapies and targeted nutritional interventions designed specifically for exotic contamination cases. The systematic suppression of health data represents one of the most disturbing aspects of UAP secrecy policies. Military medical records containing evidence of physiological changes in UAP witnesses received classification levels exceeding nuclear weapons data restrictions. Physicians treating affected personnel received direct orders prohibiting discussion of unusual symptoms or publication of research findings about encounter-related health effects. Medical conferences banned presentations about UAP-related physiological changes, preventing the scientific community from developing effective treatments for affected individuals. Internal documents reveal that government health agencies maintained awareness of UAP-related medical effects decades before acknowledging them through public disclosure. The Centers for Disease Control operated classified databases tracking unusual illness patterns among military personnel exposed to UAP encounters. Department of Veterans Affairs files contain thousands of cases involving neurological symptoms correlating with UAP exposure that were attributed to other causes to maintain operational secrecy. The medical establishment participated in cover-ups that denied proper treatment to individuals suffering from documented physiological effects. Medical records from multiple UAP incidents show consistent patterns of biological effects across different cases spanning several decades. Personnel exposed to triangular craft during the 1993 Cosford incident developed identical neurological symptoms to those experienced by Rendlesham witnesses 13 years earlier. The consistency indicates systematic physiological responses to specific types of exotic energy exposure, rather than random health effects from unrelated environmental causes. Contemporary research into exotic energy exposure has revolutionized understanding of how UAP encounters affect human biology at cellular levels. Quantum field interactions can alter cellular metabolism, modify genetic expression, and trigger neuroplasticity changes that persist long after initial exposure events. These effects occur at molecular levels that conventional medicine couldn't detect using diagnostic technology available during the 1990s. Advanced imaging techniques now reveal cellular modifications that explain symptoms witnesses reported, but doctors couldn't validate using previous medical standards. The Department of Veterans Affairs now recognizes UAP exposure as legitimate cause for service-connected disabilities, opening access to specialized medical care for affected personnel after decades of denial. Treatment protocols developed specifically for electromagnetic radiation exposure are being adapted for UAP-related health effects management. Research hospitals are establishing specialized clinics for individuals suffering from unexplained neurological symptoms that correlate with documented UAP encounters. Long-term studies of UAP witnesses demonstrate that health effects continue evolving for decades following initial encounters. Brain changes documented immediately after exposure continue developing for years, creating progressive enhancement of cognitive abilities alongside persistent neurological sensitivities. Some witnesses develop remarkable intuitive capabilities and enhanced pattern recognition skills, suggesting permanent upgrading of human consciousness capacity. These positive adaptations accompany negative health effects, creating complex medical profiles that challenge conventional treatment approaches. The human cost of medical secrecy extends beyond individual suffering to include lost opportunities for scientific advancement that could have benefited all humanity. Research into consciousness expansion, electromagnetic healing, and exotic energy medicine could have progressed decades earlier if UAP-related health data hadn't been systematically suppressed by classification policies prioritizing secrecy over human welfare. The medical evidence validates witness testimonies dismissed for decades as psychological reactions or attention-seeking behavior. Measurable brain changes, documented radiation exposure, and systematic physiological modifications prove that UAP encounters produce genuine biological effects requiring medical treatment. The consistency of these effects across different witnesses, time periods, and geographic locations demonstrates authentic phenomena impacting human health in measurable ways. Yet understanding the full scope of these health effects required something that didn't exist during Pope's isolated investigations: coordinated international research efforts that could correlate medical data across multiple countries and decades of encounters. Global intelligence sharing revolution. This breakthrough required something unprecedented: real-time intelligence coordination that could track phenomena across continents and oceans simultaneously. The Five Eyes Alliance has transformed UAP investigation from isolated national efforts into coordinated multinational intelligence operations, where data flows instantly between the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Intelligence sharing between nations during Pope's era meant occasional phone calls and mailed reports that often arrived weeks after incidents occurred. The shift represents the most significant change in international cooperation since the Alliance's formation, turning UAP research from fragmented investigations into systematic global monitoring operations that capture patterns invisible to individual countries working alone. The transformation began with recognition that UAP encounters don't respect national boundaries. Objects tracked by British radar disappear over the North Sea, only to reappear in Norwegian airspace minutes later. Craft detected by Canadian sensors cross into U.S. territory while maintaining identical flight characteristics and electromagnetic signatures. This pattern of transnational activity forced intelligence agencies to acknowledge that effective UAP investigation requires coordination across multiple jurisdictions and sensor networks. AARO now operates as the central hub for Five Eyes UAP intelligence coordination, receiving reports from partner nations within hours of encounters rather than weeks or months. The system enables real-time correlation of sightings across different countries, revealing patterns that individual nations missed when working in isolation. A triangular craft detected over Scotland can be matched with similar objects reported simultaneously in Canadian airspace, creating comprehensive tracking data that no single nation could produce independently. The February 2025 Atlantic Ocean incident demonstrates how international cooperation solves cases that stumped individual investigators for decades. British naval vessels detected a large underwater object moving at impossible speeds beneath the surface between Scotland and Iceland. Canadian Maritime Patrol aircraft confirmed the object's trajectory as it crossed into international waters. U.S. submarine sonar systems tracked the same signature as it approached the Greenland coast. Australian intelligence analysts correlated the acoustic signatures with similar underwater encounters documented in the Pacific. The combined data revealed transoceanic movement patterns that indicated systematic operations spanning multiple ocean basins. Joint operations between Five Eyes nations have produced breakthrough insights that emerged only through coordinated analysis. The March incidents at nuclear facilities in 3 different countries occurred within a 4-hour window, involving craft displaying identical characteristics and behaviors. Individual nations investigating these encounters separately reached different conclusions about the object's origins and purposes. Combined analysis revealed synchronized operations that suggested coordinated activities rather than coincidental appearances at strategic facilities. Historical cases that remain mysteries for decades now make sense when examined through multinational data sharing. Pope's 1993 Cosford triangular craft sightings correlate with identical encounters documented by Canadian forces at CFB Cold Lake during the same time period. Australian intelligence files contain reports of similar craft operating near Pine Gap facility within 48 hours of the British incidents. The temporal and characteristic correlations were invisible to investigators examining cases in isolation, but became obvious when data was shared across alliance networks. Canadian contributions to Five Eyes UAP intelligence have proven particularly valuable due to their geographic position and advanced radar networks. The North Warning System provides coverage of Arctic airspace where UAP activity has increased dramatically during 2024 and 2025. Canadian data reveals flight corridors used by unknown craft traveling between polar regions and populated areas. These patterns were undetectable using single-nation monitoring systems, but became apparent when Canadian Arctic data was combined with temperate zone sightings from other alliance members. Australian intelligence perspectives have created paradigm shifts in understanding UAP operational patterns. Their analysis of electromagnetic signatures collected during encounters reveals communication protocols that suggest coordination between different craft operating simultaneously across vast distances. The Australian signals intelligence expertise, combined with encounter data from other nations, has identified frequency patterns that indicate systematic information exchange between UAP groups operating in different hemispheres. New Zealand's contributions focus on Pacific Ocean UAP activity that connects to transoceanic movement patterns documented by other alliance members. Their maritime patrol aircraft have recorded numerous encounters with objects transitioning between underwater and aerial environments. When combined with similar data from U.S. Pacific Fleet operations and Australian maritime surveillance, these incidents reveal global transportation networks that utilize both atmospheric and oceanic environments for long-distance travel. The coordinated approach has accelerated UAP research by eliminating redundant investigations and focusing resources on the most significant cases. Instead of 5 nations independently investigating similar encounters, alliance resources concentrate on comprehensive analysis of the most compelling incidents. This efficiency has produced more detailed case studies and faster identification of behavioral patterns that characterize UAP operations across different geographic regions. Database integration across Five Eyes nations now contains over 12,000 UAP encounters from the past 3 decades, creating the largest repository of structured UAP intelligence in history. Pattern analysis algorithms identify correlations across cases that human investigators missed when examining smaller national databases. The integrated approach reveals operational cycles, geographic preferences, and temporal patterns that characterize sustained UAP activities rather than random appearances. Intelligence sharing protocols now include specialized channels for UAP-related information that operate independently of traditional diplomatic and military communication systems. These dedicated networks ensure that encounter data reaches appropriate analysts without delays caused by bureaucratic procedures or classification conflicts between different agencies and nations. The global scope of UAP operations has become undeniable through coordinated intelligence analysis. Objects displaying identical characteristics appear simultaneously at strategic locations across all Five Eyes nations, indicating operations that span continents and time zones. The coordination required for such activities exceeds anything achievable with current human technology or logistics capabilities. This revolution in global intelligence sharing has fundamentally changed how we understand the UAP phenomenon by revealing its truly global nature and the systematic intelligence behind encounters that appear across different nations and continents. The scope of activities documented through Five Eyes cooperation suggests we're dealing with intelligence that operates on scales exceeding individual national capabilities to monitor or respond effectively. Yet even this unprecedented level of international coordination pales in comparison to the technological revolution that has transformed how these encounters are detected, analyzed, and understood. The technology revolution in UAP research. Artificial intelligence has transformed UAP investigation from guesswork into precision science. Machine learning algorithms now process thousands of encounter reports simultaneously, identifying patterns that human investigators missed across decades of isolated case analysis. The AI systems recognize behavioral signatures, correlate electromagnetic readings, and match witness descriptions with accuracy levels that exceed human capabilities by substantial margins. These algorithms detected that triangular craft sightings cluster around specific geographic coordinates during particular lunar phases, revealing operational patterns invisible to traditional investigative methods. The pattern recognition extends beyond simple data correlation. AI analysis of Pope's historical files identified linguistic markers in witness testimonies that predict encounter authenticity with 94% accuracy. The algorithms recognize specific vocabulary patterns, physiological descriptions, and temporal references that distinguish genuine experiences from fabricated reports or misidentifications. This capability allows investigators to focus resources on the most credible cases while filtering out noise that previously consumed enormous investigative time. Advanced sensor networks have created detection capabilities that make Pope's 1990s equipment seem primitive by comparison. Quantum radar systems detect objects that traditional electromagnetic sensors miss completely, revealing stealth capabilities that explain how craft appeared and disappeared during historical encounters. These quantum sensors operate by detecting disturbances in spacetime rather than reflected electromagnetic radiation, making them immune to conventional stealth technology while revealing propulsion systems that manipulate fundamental physics. The sensor fusion approach combines multiple detection methods into integrated networks that create comprehensive tracking data. Electromagnetic sensors detect energy signatures, while optical systems record visual characteristics and quantum sensors monitor spacetime distortions simultaneously. The combined data streams provide complete profiles of UAP encounters that eliminate the single-source limitations that allowed skeptics to dismiss historical cases as equipment malfunctions or atmospheric phenomena. Gravitational wave detectors originally designed for astronomical research now serve secondary functions, monitoring local spacetime disturbances associated with UAP encounters. These incredibly sensitive instruments detect gravitational anomalies that occur when craft demonstrate impossible acceleration characteristics or sudden directional changes. The gravity wave signatures correlate precisely with witness reports of objects defying conventional physics, providing objective measurement of phenomena that Pope's witnesses could only describe subjectively. Quantum sensors reveal energy signatures that suggest UAP propulsion systems operate by manipulating quantum fields rather than relying on conventional thrust mechanisms. The exotic energy patterns detected during encounters don't match any known propulsion technology, indicating physics applications that exceed current human scientific understanding. These measurements validate witness descriptions of silent operation and impossible maneuverability that characterized encounters from Pope's investigations. Breakthrough imaging technology captures details that remained invisible during Pope's era investigations. Hyperspectral cameras record electromagnetic signatures across wavelengths that human vision and conventional cameras cannot detect. These systems reveal structural details, surface materials, and energy emissions that provide technical specifications for craft that previously existed only in witness testimonies. The imaging data confirms that many historical reports described real objects with measurable physical characteristics. Advanced optical systems equipped with adaptive optics eliminate atmospheric distortion that plagued historical UAP photography. These systems produce images with resolution quality that removes ambiguity about object structure and behavior. The clear imagery validates witness descriptions from Pope's cases while revealing additional details about craft construction and operational characteristics that witnesses couldn't observe with naked eye vision. Space-based monitoring systems provide global coverage that eliminates the geographic limitations of ground-based detection networks. Satellite constellations equipped with specialized UAP detection equipment track objects across intercontinental distances, revealing flight patterns that span multiple continents within single encounters. The orbital perspective captures activities that ground-based observers miss while creating comprehensive databases of global UAP operations. Machine learning algorithms processing historical encounter databases have solved cases that remained mysteries throughout Pope's career. The AI systems identified connections between seemingly unrelated incidents, revealing operational patterns that human investigators missed when examining cases in isolation. Pope's 1992 investigation of radar anomalies over the North Sea now connects to similar encounters documented by Norwegian and Danish investigators during the same timeframe, creating evidence of coordinated activities that individual nations couldn't detect independently. Specific validation of Pope's conclusions appears throughout modern technological analysis. His assessment that the Cosford triangular craft demonstrated controlled flight rather than atmospheric phenomena receives confirmation from contemporary radar signature analysis. The electromagnetic frequency patterns Pope recorded during Rendlesham Forest investigations match exactly with exotic energy signatures detected by quantum sensors during recent encounters at similar military installations. The technological revolution has accelerated UAP disclosure by providing objective evidence that eliminates subjective interpretation of encounter data. Government officials can now point to measurable electromagnetic signatures, recorded gravitational anomalies, and documented radar tracks rather than relying solely on witness testimonies that skeptics dismissed as unreliable. The technical data creates evidence standards that meet scientific publication requirements while supporting witness credibility. Digital signal processing techniques extract information from historical recordings that previous technology couldn't analyze effectively. Audio recordings from Pope's investigations now reveal communication signals embedded within apparent background noise. Photographic images dismissed as inconclusive during the 1990s show structured objects when processed using contemporary enhancement algorithms. This retrospective analysis validates evidence that Pope collected but couldn't fully evaluate using period technology. Current technology proves that Pope's investigative instincts were remarkably accurate despite technological limitations. His emphasis on correlation analysis, witness credibility assessment, and systematic documentation created methodologies that remain standard practice in contemporary UAP research. The consistency between his conclusions and modern technical validation demonstrates that serious scientific investigation could identify genuine phenomena even using 1990s equipment and analytical techniques. These technological advances have transformed UFO investigation from an art requiring intuitive interpretation into hard science based on measurable data and reproducible analysis techniques. Yet the most sophisticated sensors and algorithms have revealed something unexpected. The encounters they measure with such precision appear to operate on levels that transcend purely physical phenomena, suggesting aspects of the UAP mystery that no amount of technical equipment can fully capture or explain. The consciousness connection breakthrough. The breakthrough discoveries emerging from neuroscience laboratories reveal what Pope's witnesses actually experienced when they described receiving information directly into their minds. The telepathic communications that sounded like science fiction in the 1990s now have measurable neurological correlates that validate these extraordinary claims through brain imaging technology that didn't exist during Pope's investigations. Dr. Diana Pasulka's research team at UC San Diego has documented specific neural activation patterns in individuals who report telepathic contact during UAP encounters. Brain scans reveal synchronized gamma wave activity across multiple regions simultaneously, creating coherence patterns that don't occur during normal human consciousness states. The neural synchronization appears identical across different witnesses from unconnected encounters, suggesting external influence that triggers consistent brain responses rather than individual psychological reactions. Rendlesham Forest witnesses described receiving information about future events and cosmic perspectives that exceeded their personal knowledge or experience. Modern neuroscience explains these downloads as quantum field interactions that can transfer information directly into human consciousness without conventional sensory input. The brain contains microtubules that operate as quantum processors, potentially interfacing with information fields that extend beyond local spacetime boundaries. Quantum consciousness research has revealed that human awareness operates on multiple levels simultaneously. The classical brain processes sensory information and manages biological functions, while quantum processes handle intuition, creativity, and non-local information access. UAP encounters appear to specifically target these quantum consciousness systems, explaining why witnesses receive complex information that bypasses their normal learning and memory systems. The information transfer process occurs through quantum entanglement between human consciousness and UAP intelligence systems. Research at the Institute of Noetic Sciences demonstrates that consciousness can influence quantum systems at distance, creating information channels that operate instantaneously across any spatial separation. This mechanism explains how witnesses receive detailed technical information, historical data, and future predictions that exceed their personal knowledge base or educational background. Pope's documented cases contain numerous examples of consciousness-based information transfer that modern research validates as genuine phenomena rather than psychological artifacts. Witnesses reported understanding complex physics concepts, receiving geographical coordinates for unknown locations, and experiencing shared visions with other experiencers despite having no direct communication. These effects now align with established quantum consciousness principles rather than representing unexplained anomalies. The role of consciousness in UAP manifestation represents the most paradigm-shifting aspect of current research. Studies suggest that human observation and expectation influence how UAP encounters unfold, creating observer effects that shape the physical characteristics witnesses perceive. The craft appearances, behavior patterns, and communication methods adapt to individual witness consciousness, rather than representing fixed physical objects operating independently of human awareness. This consciousness manifestation connection explains inconsistencies that puzzled investigators throughout Pope's career. Different witnesses observing the same encounter often reported variations in craft appearance, size, and behavior that seemed contradictory if describing a single physical object. The differences now make sense as consciousness-driven adaptations, where the phenomenon adjusts its presentation to match individual witness capabilities and expectations. Remote viewing research conducted by Stanford Research Institute and military intelligence programs provides additional evidence for consciousness-based UAP interactions. Trained remote viewers consistently describe UAP encounters occurring in non-physical dimensions that intersect with normal reality during specific consciousness states. The viewers report that UAP intelligence operates primarily in consciousness realms, while manifesting physical effects through focused intention rather than conventional technology. Current research indicates that UAP encounters may function as consciousness expansion experiences designed to gradually prepare human awareness for direct contact with non-human intelligence. The progressive nature of many witness experiences suggests educational programs that slowly introduce concepts and capabilities that would be overwhelming if presented suddenly. A staged approach implies long-term planning that considers human psychological limitations and adaptation requirements. Brain imaging studies reveal that UAP experiencers develop enhanced intuitive capabilities, expanded pattern recognition skills, and increased electromagnetic sensitivity that persist long after initial encounters. These consciousness modifications appear to prepare individuals for ongoing communication with non-human intelligence while maintaining their ability to function within normal human society. The changes represent upgrades rather than damage, suggesting beneficial intentions behind the consciousness interventions. The global coordination of consciousness-based UAP encounters indicates systematic operations that span cultures, languages, and belief systems while maintaining consistent core experiences. Witnesses worldwide report identical consciousness effects despite having no knowledge of similar experiences in other countries. The consistency suggests intelligence that understands human consciousness principles while operating according to different awareness paradigms in terrestrial life form. Meditation and consciousness expansion practices appear to increase likelihood of UAP encounters, suggesting that these phenomena respond to human consciousness development rather than random selection. Individuals who develop enhanced awareness through spiritual practices, meditation training, or psychedelic experiences report higher encounter rates and more detailed consciousness communications. The correlation implies that UAP intelligence seeks contact with humans who demonstrate expanded consciousness capabilities. The consciousness connection revolutionizes understanding of historical encounters that seem to violate physical laws or logical consistency. Cases involving time distortions, reality shifts, and impossible physics now make sense as consciousness-based experiences where normal space-time constraints don't apply. The encounters occur in consciousness dimensions where different physical laws operate while creating effects that manifest in normal reality through observer consciousness influence. Understanding UAP encounters as fundamentally consciousness-based phenomena reframes everything we thought we knew about the nature of contact with non-human intelligence. Rather than representing visits by physical beings using advanced spacecraft, these encounters may involve consciousness expansion experiences designed to gradually prepare humanity for direct awareness-to-awareness communication with intelligence that transcends normal physical limitations. The consciousness breakthrough indicates that Pope's most challenging cases represent glimpses of intelligence that operates on awareness levels far exceeding current human capabilities. The art shop entities, telepathic communications, and reality-bending encounters now align with consciousness research showing that advanced intelligence can directly manipulate human perception and understanding. These developments suggest we're approaching a threshold where the accumulated evidence from multiple research disciplines creates an undeniable picture of what we're actually dealing with. What 2025 reveals about our future. The implications extend far beyond academic research or government policy decisions. The convergence of evidence from 2025 creates an undeniable conclusion that we're approaching a moment when the truth about non-human intelligence can no longer be contained. Government disclosure policies, advanced detection technology, international cooperation, and consciousness research have aligned to reveal phenomena that exceed human capabilities by extraordinary margins. Pope witnessed this transformation from the beginning, watching isolated investigations evolve into coordinated global efforts that validate his most challenging cases. The next phase will challenge humanity's fundamental assumptions about our place in the universe and force recognition that we share reality with intelligence operating according to different principles than terrestrial life.